So I recently tested the Cadillac CT5-V, and it wasn't the real V that everybody was expecting to replace the CTS-V. And today I'm driving the CT4-V, which was supposed to replace the ATS-V, but it doesn't. Just like the CT5-V, the CT4-V is a much tamer version of the model that it replaces, and that's because the V brand is all over the place. Now, the Vs that you have, the CT5-V and the CT4-V, actually compete with Audi's S, BMW's M, not real M's, the M240i's and the M340i's. The real replacement for the ATS-V will be called the CT4-V Blackwing, and that will go on sale in summer 2021. And I apologize on behalf of Cadillac for making this also confusing. Today I'll be giving you a tour of the 2020 Cadillac CT4-V, and then I'll give you my opinion on what I think about it. But before I do, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you hit like. All right, let's do this. As always, before we get into everything else, let's take a look at some of the cool and interesting things that you should know about the 2020 Cadillac CT4-V. First up, even though this isn't a real V, since the real V will be called the CT4-V Blackwing, we still have to listen to the exhaust sound because it does have a V badge after all. In my opinion, that was pretty underwhelming. The CT5-V sounded much better than this. And also, when you're really pushing this thing hard on the inside, it doesn't sound as bassy. I wish there was some more snap, crackle, and pop from the exhaust, but that's what you have in the CT4-V. If you've seen my review of the Cadillac CT5-V, you'll know just how crazy this thing is when it comes to the various drive modes. You do have My Mode, Tour, Sport, Track, Snow, and Ice, and then you have V mode, which you can access by pushing that button right there. You'll see a little V pop up right there in the display. Now there are a bunch of other hidden modes. So say you're in sport mode, and if you hit the traction button twice, you'll enter competitive mode. You have to be really good with your fingers, because if you don't tap fast enough, you won't enter the proper mode. And then if you enter track mode, let it activate, and then tap the traction button twice, you enter performance traction, and then you can select through wet, dry, sport 1, Sport 2, and Race, and that's where you launch control. But even when you launch control, you won't see launch control active or anything in the display. You just go for it. But this is the mode that you enter to launch control the CT4-V. It's the most difficult thing in the world to activate, but once you get the hang of it, you probably will get it right. So I have it in track mode, and then I have it in race mode. So I'm going to put the foot on the brake, accelerator all the way down, build. Oh man, some slippage. Now let's talk about how much the 2020 Cadillac CT4-V will cost you. The regular CT4-V starts at $32,990. The CT4-V starts at $44,495. As tested here, you're looking at right over $52,000. And when you compare that to the CT5-V, the CT4-V costs just $3,000 less. Now let's get into horsepower and torque. And 0 to 60. Power for the CT4-V comes from a 2.7 liter 4-cylinder turbo engine, making 325 horsepower and 381 pound-feet of torque, and that's made it to a 10-speed automatic transmission. The CT5-V makes 360 horsepower, but for some reason this feels a little bit better than the CT5-V. 0 to 60 comes in at 4.5 seconds, which makes it quicker than the CT5-V, which will do it in 4.8 seconds. So this one definitely is a little bit quicker and actually feels a little bit sharper as well. Now when it comes to fuel economy, you get 20 city and 29 highway. You have a 17-gallon tank capacity. I'm averaging, after a few days of driving, a total of 16 miles a gallon. I don't know how I feel about that one. Moving on from all that, let's take a closer look at the exterior design, because I think this looks a little bit better than the CT5-V. Now I know in my CT5-V review I said the CT5-V looked better, but I'm allowed to change my mind, and I'm changing my mind. I think the CT4-V actually looks slightly better than the CT5-V. Now I thought about it a lot, why I changed my mind and why the CT4-V looks better to me than the CT5-V is because of the shadow metallic color. I think this color is beautiful, and if you're gonna get a CT4-V or a CT5-V, make sure you get it in the shadow metallic color because it shines and looks really, really cool. Now, most of Cadillac's new lineup is inspired by the Escala concept, which is kind of short for Escalade, and that's been influencing all of Cadillac's new vehicles, including the CT4-V here. Of course, the CT4-V here looks a little bit more aggressive than its slower counterpart, and that's because there are dark exterior accents everywhere, including the V-Series mesh grille, which I think looks really, really cool. You got dark accents on the side view mirrors, the moldings, the rear spoiler, and then you have quad exhaust tips, which are kind of actually fake. Unlike the Cadillac CT5-V, the CT4-V comes standard with 18-inch wheels, but you have the Brembo brakes with the V-Series logo, which looks really cool, and you can upgrade to 19-inch wheels if you want to pay extra. Now let's take a closer look at the headlights because I really like them, and this might be another reason why I think the CT4-V looks slightly better than the CT5-V. The CT5-V breaks up the headlight design with some body color trim, but on the CT4-V, they just keep going continuously like on older Cadillacs. Same with the taillights. I think they look really, really cool. And actually, the rear end of the CT4-V is probably my favorite angle. I don't know why, it just looks really beefy and aggressive from the rear view. All right, before moving on, let's check out the cargo capacity and pop the trunk on the CT4-V. The button to pop the trunk is located right here above the license plate. And once you get it open, you have 10.7 cubic feet. And that's enough room for my junk, my filming junk over there. And it's actually pretty roomy. You have 60-40 split rear seats as well if you want to load long items through the back. Moving on, let's hop inside and take a look at the interior of the 2020 Cadillac CT4-V, because just like the CT5-V, it's actually pretty nice in here. Now, the first thing that I did when I got inside the CT5-V was look for hard plastic, and I couldn't find it anywhere like you do on older Cadillacs, and the same goes for the CT4-V. There's not much hard plastic at all. You have a nice soft touch leather wrap dash, and you have soft touch materials here. The steering is really nice, soft touch above the steering wheel, soft touch on the side panels, leather wrapped somewhat, and it's actually a very nice place to be. And the only thing that I don't like is this fingerprint prone polished black trim and the fingerprint prone infotainment screen. I also really like the color of these seats, and they're really, really comfortable. You get leatherette seats as standard, but my test model here has the upgraded jet black leather seats for an extra $1,000. But be careful, if you add real leather seats, you'll also have to add the climate package along with a bunch of other options, so real leather seats will run you $2,200. But the cool thing is that if you add the real leather, you'll also get heated and cooled or ventilated seats, whatever you want to call it. You'll also get a heated steering, and you'll get lumbar massage, which isn't crazy customizable. To activate the massage, you just hit this tiny little button right here, and that will start massaging your seats. But don't expect a real nice massage or it to cure any back pains or lower back pains. It just kind of pushes you front and back. Nothing that exciting. The Cadillac CUE system is housed in this 8-inch touchscreen display, which is very prone to fingerprints. But if you want navigation and the Bose sound system, you will have to pay an extra $800. Nonetheless, you do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard, so if you don't care about a good sound system, you can just save yourself $800. But if you want the Bose sound system, you will have to pay $800, and that will also give you Cadillac's native navigation system. And if you want a deeper dive of this infotainment system, check out my Cadillac CT5-V review, where I go into great detail about this infotainment system, which you can control from touching the screen. You can control it through this knob right here, or the dial in the center console. Now, while we're here talking about the tech, let's just take a look at the gauge cluster. It's not digital. If you go for the tech package for $1,150, you do get this 8-inch display, which is not like full color or anything fancy. Even the navigation just kind of points an arrow and tells you where you are. And you can go through some options. You have your V page, you have your information page, your media, navigation, phone, and settings. But it's nothing fancy. The real fancy digital gauge cluster display will show up in the CT5 and CT4-V Blackwing, and they released a teaser of the steering wheel, and behind that you can actually see the digital gauge cluster display, so I can't wait for that one to come out. Let's hop in the back and check out the rear legroom. You get 33.4 inches of rear legroom, and let me hop in. That's my seating position. I'm about 6 foot tall, and as you can see, it is pretty tight in here. So if you want more legroom, go for the Cadillac CT5-V, and that will give you 37.9 inches of rear legroom. So if you want more legroom, you need to go for the CT5-V because it's pretty tight in here. I can't even put my leg down all the way. Now, before I give you my opinion on how it is to drive the CT4-V, let me point out a few random things that I love to show all of you. You have 4 cup holders. Ow, I just hit the door on the phone. You got 2 in the front, and you got 2 in the back, and that's really it. You have a wireless charger, which lives right here, and it's an upgrade. It doesn't come standard, so if you want wireless charger, you will have to pay extra. I don't know why wireless chargers just aren't standard. There's a plane flying above me. And then you have a USB port right here and a USB-C port right here. And if your screen gets super dirty, sorry for the beeping. If I could keep my door open, it just continues beeping. If your screen gets dirty, you get this Cadillac cloth to just wipe it down. Pretty cool. Let's hear the door open and close sound on the CT4-V from the outside and from the inside. pretty solid. Here are what the keys look like for the Cadillac CT4-V and actually almost every Cadillac that's out now. Get a nice little Cadillac logo in the back. Then you have lock, unlock, remote start, trunk, and your panic button if you want to panic and scare people away. And finally, here is how the horn sounds on the 2020 Cadillac CT4-V. Pretty solid. I like it. Now that I've given you a tour of the 2020 Cadillac CT4-V, let me give you my opinion on what I think about this not so real V, but it's still pretty fun to drive. Let's get to it. So yeah, it does get a little confusing with the whole V and V Blackwing thing. Personally, I would have just called this the CT4-V Sport and kept the V name as it was, because now it's kind of like you're starting from scratch, where V is now a slower brand, and then you have to introduce this whole new thing called V Blackwing, which will be the more high performance versions of these cars. Not only is the V and V Blackwing thing a little bit confusing, the positioning of the CT4 and the CT5 is also a little bit confusing. The CTS, that used to compete with the E-Class and the 5 Series, but now the CT5 competes with the 3 Series and the C-Class. The ATS used to compete with the 3 Series and the 4 Series, but now it competes with the 2 Series and the CLA, I guess? So yeah, it's all a bit confusing. Nonetheless, once you move on from all that confusion, the CT4-V and the CT5-V are actually pretty fun to drive. The CT4-V, in my opinion, feels a little bit sharper and sportier than the CT5-V. My only issue with the CT4-V, it doesn't sound like a V. The CT5-V actually had some growl to it. It's pretty quiet in the CT4-V. I've only got this thing to pop the exhaust maybe like once, and I can't replicate it for the life of me. But once you get past that, handling wise and in sport mode and track mode, this thing will definitely, that engine sound isn't like a good growl. It just sounds very blah. But yeah, handling wise and acceleration wise, this thing is actually pretty nice. The CT5-V will do 0 to 60 in 4.8 seconds. This will do it in 4.5 seconds. So yeah, this one is a little bit more fun to drive, but I'm just upset it doesn't sound that nice. Either way, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you follow me on Instagram at Omar Drives or on TikTok at Omar Drives. I'll see you next week. Take care. Peace. I'm going fast. See, that growl isn't the good kind of growl. It's just a loud engine. There's no snap, crackle, and pop from the exhaust. They could have made this sound so much better.